Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's National Business Emergency Operations Center call. Like a lot of things right now, we're doing things a little bit differently. And so this actually serves as the kickoff for the 9th annual Private-Public Partnership Conference, Building Resilience Through Those Partnerships. We're using today's NBEOC call to try out some different technology, as well as potentially bring some new partners into the mix and to provide some relevant updates. I'll be joined today by a number of partners, including Senior Director of the Chamber Foundation, Brooks Nelson, who's been instrumental in pulling together the conference over the next couple of days from the 14th to the 16th of July, starting next week. So just a couple of things. There are things that have not changed because this is an NBEOC call. The first is if there's a procurement item, we're not really going to get into it. However, the NBEOC dashboard is being monitored right now. If you've got a question, you can post that to the NBEOC dashboard. And then we're also using this other technology, which has a built-in chat feature as well. Both of the platforms are going to be monitored throughout the conference. Due to some line limitations, we're not going to be able to have the back and forth dialogue verbally. However, we will be taking periodic stops throughout the hour to review any of the questions or comments or concerns that are coming in from those different chat features. And so we certainly would be glad to do that. If we're not able to answer your question and it's really in the weeds, please just kind of flag that and we'll get back to you. So very excited about the conference kicking off today, and then certainly in earnest on Tuesday. So for purposes of today's call, at first we're going to get an update from Steve Goldstein, who many of you have received updates previously from NOAA. We'll also have Region 9 in the state of California. Abby Browning should be joining us here shortly to give us an overview of their operations related to COVID, and then other challenges that they're dealing with, including wildfire readiness. And then we'll also have OSHA cover some of the items that they're working on from a COVID standpoint. And then we're going to transition into covering a little bit more in detail some of the opportunities to hear from leadership, both within government and the private sector next week. We will, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brooks Nelson over at the Chamber for an additional welcome. Brooks?
Thank you, Rob. And we really appreciate the partnership with DHS, FEMA, and U.S. Northern Command to put on this conference. As you mentioned, it's all about partnership and collaboration, and we know that that is so needed in all cycles of disaster. And there is no lack of content for us to focus on this year at the conference. And excitingly for us, no lack of interest. I know a number of you on the line have been in person for this event, though we would love to see you all in person again. Unfortunately, we're all virtual, but as I mentioned, it has increased the interest, and we've already tripled the number of folks who we anticipate joining next week. We expect to see those numbers probably quadruple. So we're very excited. Again, really appreciate the partnership and excited to share some of the updates about the conference towards the end of today's NBOC call. So with that, I know there are a number of disasters on folks' minds, especially the current updates with COVID, but also Tropical Storm Faye. So with that, I think we're going to turn to Steve Goldstein, who's the Weather Service Liaison for FEMA. Steve, thanks for being here.
Okay, good afternoon. At 2 o'clock Eastern Time, Tropical Storm Faye was 25 miles east-southeast of Cape May, New Jersey, and 140 miles south of New York City. It's moving north at 12 miles an hour and now has maximum sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for Fenwick Island, Delaware, to Watch Hill, Rhode Island. This includes Long Island Sound, the southern Delaware Bay, the New Jersey coast, and southern New England. On the weather radar at the present time, we are seeing bands of heavy rain with rainfall rates greater than 1 inch per hour across eastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, moving into New York City and northern Delaware. We've had reports of street flooding in the Philadelphia area, including the closure of parts of Interstate 76. There have been some swift water rescues near Cape May, New Jersey, and parts of central New Jersey. A little bit earlier, we saw some wind gusts of 45 to 55 miles an hour at the mouth of the Delaware Bay, and there's currently a flash flood warning in effect for the New York City metropolitan area. Looking at this graphic, we are expecting 2 to 4 inches of rain from the tropical storm, with up to 7 inches from Delaware northward into New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, southeast New York, and southern New England through this evening. This rainfall will cause the need for additional swift water rescues, rapid flooding of smaller creeks and streams, additional street flooding, road closures, and bridge washouts are possible. There could also be some mudslides in the steep terrain of the Poconos, the Berkshires, and the Catskill Mountains. Minor coastal flooding is possible along the immediate coast, but in general, widespread major coastal flooding and widespread major river flooding are not expected with this tropical storm. One additional hazard to watch out for would be an isolated tornado that doesn't last very long and spins up quickly along coastal New Jersey, southeastern New York State, and southern New England into the evening hours until Faye moves inland and weakens. And pending any questions, that concludes my update.
Hey, thanks a lot, Steve. Want to take a quick pause and see if there are any items coming in from the chat. If we could get those communicated to me, then I'll be able to go through that. So while we're waiting on some of the questions for Noah, our priorities at FEMA remain unchanged. The first is sustain COVID-19 operations. And the second is to be ready for any other hazard. And certainly we've heard from Steve, Tropical Storm Faye. There are a variety of efforts underway across the states there to posture appropriately. And certainly we're in the middle of hurricane season, given us July 10th. From a current landscape view right now, from a COVID-19 standpoint, we are seeing upward trajectory in case count across a number of states and territories. 12 states are moving upwards. 21 look like they're plateauing, including North Carolina, Texas, and Arizona. We do have federal medical support across DOD, the Public Health Service, the National Disaster Medical Service, and a number of other efforts, including the VA, the Veterans Administration, being provided to Texas, California, and Florida. And we also have COVID response assistance field teams, including CDC, that have deployed to 9 locations across the United States. Most skilled nursing facilities are reporting enough on hand. However, it still remains fairly tight. We also are keeping track across all 50 states through our 10 regional offices with different levels of activation to support their needs, and then also would like to highlight a slight change with the temporary final rule that is currently effective until August 10th to allocate certain scarce or threatened materials for domestic use. So the materials may not be exported from the U.S. without explicit approval by FEMA. If you have a surplus of a covered material, and there are 5 categories of the material, if you go to FEMA.gov or the Federal Register, you can get that there. But to highlight their gloves, elastomeric face masks, and N95s, and a few other categories. If you believe you have a surplus of covered material, can demonstrate a good faith and unsuccessful attempt to sell the material domestically, you can submit a letter to FEMA to export the material. Send the letter of attestation, which is not new, to nbeoc@max.gov. Just describe the material you wish to export, the reasonable efforts to market or sell the material domestically, the difference between domestic and demand of production, and how the proposed export volume will not interfere with the continued satisfaction of domestic demand. So much like we've been doing for a number of months since April, we'll review those letters of attestation with our partners at State, Commerce, CBP, and others, and render a decision within 3 business days after receiving the letter of attestation. So want to check the chat one more time. And right now we don't have any additional questions for NOAA. We will have the NBEOC dashboard up and running along with any kind of staff to handle any questions should that occur in the regional and certainly the state offices. So with that, would like to turn the time over to FEMA Region 9, where we have Susan Waller and Abby Browning from the state of California to provide a regional overview. I understand that Abby will not be able to join us immediately. However, Susan will provide a regional update, and if we've got a little bit of a buffer, we might move forward with the OSHA update to accommodate Abby's pressing issue out in California. Susan, over to you.
Thanks, Rob, and hello, everyone. Again, my name is Susan Waller, and I work with FEMA Region 9, and we're headquartered out of Oakland, California. And so in FEMA Region 9, we are responsible for direct coordination with the emergency management offices of California, Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, Guam, our territory, as well as Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands and American Samoa. And we do direct coordination with them, and we've been working hard with the COVID-19 event, but we, as well as everyone else, are closely watching some increased activity. I think you'll hear from Abby in California Office of Emergency Services, and then Arizona has had some increased activity. So we're watching it all very closely. In addition to that, in FEMA Region 9, we realize that we are starting our fire season earlier and earlier every year. So we have what we're calling deliberate planning in our region for the wildfire season, as well as hurricanes, typhoons, and always the ever-present possibility of an earthquake. So there are many considerations for that. And with our deliberate planning, we hope to address how we would handle that concurrent activity, disaster activity, in addition to ongoing COVID activities. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And Abby should be joining us soon to give us updates from the state of California.
Thank you, Susan, for that update. I know Abby was called away for the governor. So I think at this point, we'll move on to the Department of Labor presentation with OSHA. So I think we can go to Andrew, who's joining us. Deputy Director, Andrew?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks so much. My name is Andy Levinson. I'm Deputy Director of OSHA's Directorate of Standards and Guidance, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about OSHA's, about the Safe and Sound campaign and Safe and Sound Week. If we can go to the slides, please. If we can go to the next slide. So safety and health programs are basically about helping businesses transition from playing whack-a-mole and dealing with individual safety and health issues or compliance with individual standards and moving to the point where you have an integrated program where you can proactively address safety and health issues, and that will overall improve lots of things around business operations. If you can go to the next slide. So most people, when they're thinking about safety and health, think about the direct costs, those top 3 lines of this slide where people are looking at the cost of the injury or the cost to work comp or complying with OSHA regs. One of the things about transitioning from reactive to proactive approaches to safety and health is that you will find that it improves your overall business productivity. And that's because when somebody is injured, your business stops doing whatever it intended to do that day that ostensibly was working to earn it money and serve your clients and customers, and stops and deals with the hazard and the aftermath of that. So in many cases, if you're looking at a construction site that has to shut down for a day because of a severe injury, or a production line in a facility, or all of the time and effort that goes into addressing a safety and hazard, those productivity costs can actually, in many cases, greatly exceed the costs of the direct costs of the injuries and the illnesses. The other thing with safety and health programs is that you will find that it dramatically increases your employee engagement, and you can wind up saving lots of money in terms of reduced employee turnover, increased morale, and increased productivity in other ways as well. If we can go on to the next slide. When we talk about safety and health programs, there are three core elements: management, leadership, worker participation, and a systematic approach to find and fix hazards. Now, the Safe and Sound campaign is co-organized by the 7 organizations that you see at the bottom of this slide, and it represents broadly the leadership of the safety and health profession through OSHA, our sister agency NIOSH, that's part of the CDC, the professional societies like the American Industrial Hygiene Association, the American Society of Safety Professionals, business leadership through the National Safety Council and the Voluntary Protection Program Participant Administration, and the labor movement through CPWR. In addition to these 7 organizations as co-organizers, there are another 220 plus organizations that are partners, and I'm proud to say that the Chamber of Commerce, who's helping organize this call, is one of those partners. But we have partners in just about every industry sector, be it professional society, labor union organizations, etc. If we can move on to the next slide. As we're talking about management leadership, what this broadly means is that the leaders of the organization, through the owners, the corporate board, the facility managers, are saying safety is important, and that we are going to make that a priority for our organization, and that they're going to hold people accountable to meeting those safety goals. Next slide. Worker participation means that the workers are involved in the safety management activities itself. And that's because worker participation is a crucial element to safety management. The workers are the ones who will tell you where they're getting hurt. They're the ones who can tell you where there are near misses. They're the ones who can tell you where there are conflicts between the different policies and procedures in the organization. If people are taking shortcuts on safety, there's usually a good reason, and they will often tell you why there are conflicts. The other thing that workers are also a really good sentinel for is oftentimes senior leadership will say safety is a priority, but you may have challenges with frontline or middle management who are focusing more on productivity. And so this is another way that you can bring people in to get a more rounded vision of what's going on in your organization. Next slide, please. Finding and fixing hazards in a systematic way is what people often focus on, and it's actually the easiest thing to do, and usually an afterthought after you've gotten the management leadership and the worker participation piece aligned. But this is the part where you're setting up a continuous improvement process that can really help you, again, go from whack-a-mole to solving problems proactively before people are injured, before you bear the costs, and setting up a system so that your business can really focus on doing what it intends to do each day, which is produce your product, provide your services, serve your clients and customers. You can move on to the next slide. The key point here is if you go to osha.gov/safe and sound, you will find lots of resources to help your organization build a safety and health program. If we can go to the next slide. What I'm really here to talk to you about is we just kicked off this week registration for Safe and Sound Week. Safe and Sound Week is happening in the middle of August 10th to 16th, and it's a one-week effort where we try and get businesses to sign up and talk about safety and health in a proactive and positive way. Instead of only talking about safety following an injury or an illness or some sort of event, this is a chance to really talk to people and highlight what safety means to your organization and what you're doing for that. You can see the web address at the bottom. Last year, we had over 3,300 businesses participate. We had more than 1.7 million workers covered during Safe and Sound Week events last year. If we can go to the next slide. So what does Safe and Sound Week look like? There's lots of different events and activities that you can do in your organization. For example, the governor of Kentucky put out a video last year at one of their a company in Kentucky talking about their commitment to safety and health. We've seen the Navy and the Air Force participate and had lots of facilities locally do activities. If you look at the bottom right, you will see one company did a PPE fashion show last year, and they used it as a training activity in a really fun way. Obviously, there are a lot more people wearing PPE this year than last year, and this is a good opportunity to remind people of the important aspects of donning and doffing PPE, what it will and won't do. If you look one in from the right, one of the activities that we encourage is getting people talking about why safety is a core value. We've got some resource guides on how to do that, and that was a company that shared some of the things that its employees were doing to show why they cared about safety in terms of who was waiting at home for them, why they cared about, saving their back so that they could lift their grandchild, those sorts of things. So it's a very nice opportunity with lots of different activities that you can do, whether you're working together in person in your facility or you're working remotely via distance because of COVID. If I can go to the next slide. One of the other things that we offer is a free newsletter. It's monthly-ish now because of COVID. It's a little bit more difficult because OSHA is doing a lot of other activities, but you will find resources there on a pretty close to monthly basis that can help your organization. And the last slide. OSHA also has, if you're interested, a number of different resources that can help your organization with health and safety. OSHA Training Institute education centers are local community colleges spread throughout the United States that offer local training classes on various aspects of safety and health. We can help connect you with them. OSHA also offers free on-site consultation services. Many of these are through state universities. These are people who are not OSHA officials. They are not enforcement actions. They can come on and provide free on-site services to help solve problems, provide training, get your business on track. And then OSHA has a variety of different recognition programs for people who have been working on safety and health programs for a while, and that's the Voluntary Protection Program, SHARP, and OSHA Challenge. And with that, if we can go to my last slide, you've got my email address if there are questions, as well as the Safe and Sound campaign email address. I encourage you all to please go sign up and participate. And make safety a priority in your organization and let people know about it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Andrew, for that overview. I'm actually looking at the NBSE dashboard to see if there are any questions here for you before we transition back to Abby after her meeting. If there's one thing that's positive about the comments, it looks like people are interested in what we're talking about, but it's all about how to get connected. So Abby, over to you from Cal OES standpoint.
Okay, hello, and thank you very much. Thank you for your patience with me. Always something happening here in California, and I was pulled into an N95 meeting that I had to be on that call. However, I am happy to be here to talk a little bit about what California is doing as of today, July 10th. Regarding COVID-19, what we're seeing in California is very similar to what all the other states are seeing. We're having our cases are going up. It's summertime. Everyone wants to go outside. Everybody wants to do fun and exciting things, and everybody misses their friends and their families. And so they're going out, and our cases are going up. We had our highest fatality rate the other day. It is not something that we are taking very lightly. So therefore, the governor has instituted these enforcement strike teams, is what he calls them. And it's not what it sounds like. It's not like we have SWAT teams or anything running around. But basically, a strike team is made up of partners from about 10 different agencies that come through. They're like the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Control, the Barbering Commission, the labor, our different labor folks, OSHA, Business Oversight, Ag Council. What they do are they're the ones that provide licensing to the folks throughout the state in the different industries. And they go in, and education is our number one priority, first and foremost. So, for example, if there's a bar that is been reported as not maintaining socially distanced, not enforcing the masks, they're not doing hygienic things, then what the ABC person will do is go in and give them a warning and talk to them about it and educate them on what they're doing wrong and how they can fix it. And then if that doesn't work, then that's when they start getting citations and licenses get pulled. And so we've seen it as a very positive thing as it goes throughout the state, and more and more enforcement mechanisms. We've had, like, for example, one day there was over 1,000 different entities who were approached with this warning, but only, I believe, there was less than 10 citations actually given. So most of the time, it's just a lack of knowledge and an understanding of what the rules are and what can actually happen to you if you do not follow the governor's mandate for the mask wearing and socially distance. We also have all of our guidelines posted on our website. Everything can be found at covid19.ca.gov. One of the things that's different, though, for California than many of my other sister states, although some of us do have the same problems, is wildfire season is approaching. We're actually quite in the swing of things. And this year is, according to the experts, supposed to be a bad year. So that just makes things that much more fun to live in California with our earthquake concerns, our flooding concerns, and our wildfire concerns on top of COVID. So we have done quite a bit to prepare for wildfire season. Lots of innovation has been happening. We have a lot of new equipments. The governor yesterday was on his press conference, was showing some of our new Black Hawk helicopters that are able us to fight the fires at nighttime, then not just during the day. We've also cleaned areas and cleared areas. I believe the strike teams, again, another strike team, but these are the CAL FIRE strike teams, went out and cleared 35 high-risk areas that are now surrounding about 200 of these communities that are very high risk. And so we're still working on that. And we have different tactics that we're taking, and the government itself has placed a lot of money and funding into pre-positioning equipment all around the state. And that's basically what saved us last year from what we got. And the other thing that we have been working on regarding wildfire prep, of course, there's those steps that we would have taken no matter what. But then there is, how do you deal with wildfire threats, the normal things that come with wildfires and wildfire threats in the world of COVID-19. And so we have new guidelines that have been shared with all of our operational areas on how to shelter, how to evacuate, how to do all of these things safely, to keep our residents, when they move out of the area, keep them safe. We've already experienced it in Imperial County. We were able to do non-congregate sheltering with the Red Cross, and our hotel association was able to help us out there. We're planning things like that up and down the state, as well as, how the feeding is going to happen, how all of these things can take place, and these services that these Californians need after or during a fire. How can we do that with the health first and foremost? And then also keeping our own firefighters safe. And, if you think about how firefighters do things, they all gather around and get their briefings and look at this and look at that. When we have camps set up where the firefighters stay, where they're close to the front lines. All of those things have to change. All of those things can't be like that anymore. And we can't rely on what we all are using today is the virtual aspect of it, because as we all know, part of California's wildfires is we also have red flag warnings, and that means that sometimes our utilities have our public safety power shutoffs, where they shut off all the energy, and that includes telecommunications. So we can't rely on virtual things. We can't rely on the thought that this fire is not going to go into this area. We have to be prepared for anything. And so that's what we are working on here at Cal OES. And we encourage all of our businesses and all of Californians in general to think about those things as you would. So if you think about, well, what would we do if there was a wildfire? Walk through those steps, practice it with your family, with your colleagues, and then think, well, what can we not do because of COVID? What do we have to change? Are things going to be different during the day versus during the night? And we encourage you to do that and to be in touch with your local representatives, because they are the ones that are on the ground making those decisions on the fly. So having said that, that's pretty much where we are. I'm more than happy to answer questions if I can. If I can't answer them, then I can definitely take them and get an answer and have that for you later.
Hey, thanks a lot, Abby, for that good reminder of the multifaceted threats and hazards that California and other states have to confront in a COVID environment. I want to take a quick break and see if we've got any questions on the NBEOC dashboard. We do have one. It's not specific to California, but it's related to an update from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration on the extension and modification of expanded emergency declaration. It looks like it might have some bearing on the CISA Essential Employee Guidance version 3.1 that was distributed on May 19th. Don't have the right people on the line right now to answer that question, but since we're maintaining the rhythm of Mondays and Fridays of the NBEOC calls at 3 p.m. Eastern, we'll work to get DOT and CISA on the line for that on a Monday. The other thing that I just want to share is that given the duration of the COVID event, the broad stakeholder calls that the CISA has been leading weekly, they're moving to bi-weekly. So next week there will not be a call. Then the following week there will be a call. So one of the things that we're doing within ESF 14 is trying to ensure that we're kind of getting the right rhythm, recognizing that different states have different challenges at different times related to COVID. And then certainly, as we've heard from Abby and as we heard from Steve Goldstein, some of the geographic challenges that from wildfires to tropical storm that the states are confronted. And certainly from our standpoint, we still want to make sure that we're federally supporting those state managed disasters. And they're also, all disasters being local, that local execution is obviously paramount. I'm not seeing any questions for you, Abby. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and thanks for being here. We are going to transition, I think, into essentially the future look for the conference. That's kind of a light kickoff today, but certainly an earnest next week. Brooks Nelson and I are going to talk a little bit about why we're doing the conference. It's the 9th conference, where we see it going, and then how does this more strategic discussion help us maybe get a little bit perspective, share some different knowledge on not just COVID, but other kinds of threats that we're confronting right now. So Brooks, over to you to kick us off on that aspect of the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And I think, hearing Abby speak, she laid it out so well. I mean, some people may be asking, do we have time to step away for these conversations, time to step away for a conference? So, why now? But because we are in an ongoing disaster. But I think the way that Abby talked about the conversations that they're having with Californians and how they are going to respond to these different hazards given the global pandemic, and what can we learn from each other. Now is the time for these conversations to take place, especially if we're going to see COVID cases continue to rise or another swing towards the fall, and looking at a very active hurricane season, active wildfire season. And I think we are just realizing the need more than ever to be resilient. And that is only going to come through collaboration and partnerships, which is what this conference is all about. We, as I mentioned at the front end, have no lack of content for this event. We will have 10 keynote sessions and over 25 breakout sessions over those 3 days. And so we really encourage you to take a look at the agenda, look at the topics that we're going to be covering, and figure out what makes sense for your portfolio. And hopefully you can step away from your desk, from your day job, and still join these conversations. As Rob and I were discussing, we have speakers who are in the trenches day in and day out, but they're going to be taking time away to join us. And so hope that you all can join as well. So I think we really wanted to take today to kind of highlight some of the offerings within the conference, some of the high-level speakers that you may have already seen or have not seen, and dive deep into the topics that we want to discuss. But we also want to take this time to hear from you. So we would like you to utilize the chat function, whether you're on the NDOC dashboard or if you've already joined the Hub conference platform. Please put in the chat the topics that you're interested in, what you're hoping to get out of the conference, and questions that you want us to be posing to the moderators, to the speakers, and to the other attendees. As I'll share towards the end, there's a number of opportunities for collaboration within the platform. And so though we aren't meeting in person, there's still opportunities to collaborate, communicate, and co-create, and I think kind of reimagine what the next 6 months in 2021 is going to look like amidst this global pandemic and ongoing disasters. So with that, I'd love to put up the slide for day one and turn it back over to you, Rob, to sort of walk us through this.
Sure. So as Brooks has already mentioned, adapting to this new environment, we're all doing it. There are different levels and layers of leadership that we've engaged to bring to the fore, not just on day one with Acting Secretary Chad Wolf from the Department of Homeland Security, which has a variety of responsibilities from CBP to FEMA, where I work. And to a number of other issues and areas that need addressing. We have the mayor of Miami, certainly can talk through the challenges confronted there, both from an economic and epidemiological standpoint. And then, just can tell you just from my time on the ground in Puerto Rico with Ardent Mills and some of the challenges that they had there, they're now confronting some different challenges, as are a number of other industries. So we're looking at resilience in a much different way. We also have Medtronic leadership, UPS leadership, and then World Bank leadership, also to provide some keynote thoughts on really where things are going, but also some potential opportunities for us to maybe draw a little bit closer together. And so on day 2, Brooks will take us a little bit more into detail for those items.
So for day 2, we're really focusing on supporting the lives and livelihoods of all Americans and all citizens, really globally, but especially looking at vulnerable populations, looking at some of the racial injustice and inequitable impact that we've seen of natural disasters, but especially risen through COVID-19, and just looking at the civil unrest that we're experiencing today. And so we're hearing from different perspectives, hearing action items, things that we within our organization can take back and hopefully change internally, that will then hopefully have external change within our communities. Also knowing that some of the entities that have been most affected by COVID-19 and disasters generally are our small businesses in our communities that support our communities. And so we're thrilled to have the administrator of the Small Business Administration talking to that, but also providing from a global preview of small business, but also encouraging vulnerable communities and developing communities is the acting administrator from USAID. And then really looking at the frontline workers, whether it's the grocery store clerks or our delivery drivers, the essential services that keeps our economy moving and sustaining the lives of our communities, and how their lives have been impacted and how these businesses have had to change. I know so many of you on this call know this firsthand and have been living this day in and day out. And so we're excited to hear from a number of these industry leaders who represent all of these businesses who have been dealing with this day in and day out, handling the different jurisdictions and the different regulations. And thanks to CISA and their leadership, and Director Krebs, who's going to be moderating this conversation, really looking at this new essential worker and how we're keeping them protected, but also keeping the economy moving. So I know we'll have a lot to unpack in the day 2, really looking at these lives and livelihoods. And we'll touch on it in a number of different places, also with the breakout deep dives. And on to day 3.
So to wrap it up for day 3, collaborating and activating during COVID-19. So if you think about it, we're essentially all going to be handling COVID-19 plus some other event. So we've already mentioned tropical storms and hurricanes. We've mentioned wildfire. Certainly we're looking at extreme weather, other natural disasters, and all against the context of a global pandemic. So we're really pleased that we've got senior leadership from the White House, Coronavirus Response Task Force. Ambassador Birx will be talking to us about their efforts. Carlos Castillo is the acting deputy administrator for resilience. Is unique in that FEMA, we have to, much like state emergency managers, we have to manage a variety of different threats all the time. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about how do we build resilience, in this COVID plus environment. We also have, the military represented by Vice Admiral Dumont, United States Navy from U.S. Northern Command. This is a team effort broadly, but also for the conference, it's a team effort. And for some time, we've been partnered with U.S. Northcom. NORAD, pleased to have him join as well. The coronavirus and the pandemic and the challenges that it presents to us Unfortunately, we've got to deal with some real tragic events, both at the personal level and the societal level, and the systems that can really help make a difference in the future, can impact not just stabilizing the pandemic community by community and state by state, but also make a difference for overall global health. And so we've got a number of certainly I've mentioned Ambassador Birx, but also senior leadership from Emory School of Medicine, and then also from Johns Hopkins, and certainly last but not least, Mr. Jonathan Green from Health and Human Services. HHS has been dealing with this challenge for quite some time. I was part of the original FEMA team that went over very early in the event. They've been recognizing some of the challenges, but also some of the opportunities to really close the gaps. And so with that, this kind of these kinds of thought leaders, these kinds of leaders in general, we really are trying to make sure that we all can't get in a room for a variety of reasons normally, but now we really can't get all in the same room because it subjects us to some risk. We want to make sure that we're reducing the risk. And as Brooks said, this is a real opportunity to take a look at where you can plug in, where it makes sense for your operational schedule. I'm just going to tell you right now, I know that I'm not going to be able to dial in and listen to every single and observe every single panel, but I just encourage you to take a look at something that is, something that you are interested in, but also maybe something that you just haven't been exposed to yet, and maybe learn a little bit more too. Brooks?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And we hope that you all are as excited about the agenda next week as we are. The conference is live now, starting today. So really the call to action today is you've already registered for the conference. So please go in, utilize the platform, build your profile, put in information about yourself so that you can connect with the other attendees. And share the conference. Let people know that you're going to be joining. We are so thankful to our sponsors and our disaster resilience leaders who fund this programming and have made it possible for us to offer this conference free of charge. So please feel free to share with your colleagues and other connections within the Resilience Network. And then, as I mentioned, there will be a number of networking tools within the platform. There is peer-to-peer meeting rooms. You can connect with different people, ideate, discuss, look for solutions. As Abby mentioned in her presentation, things are changing and it's constantly evolving, and we have to be adaptive, which we'll focus on in day one. And so I think there will be a lot of those conversations where we can learn from each other. So many of the attendees at this conference are experts already. And so we really look to you to share that knowledge and communicate and connect. So we really look forward to seeing you all virtually next week. And with that, I'll see if we've had any questions that we can answer before we log off until Tuesday. Rob, anything on your end from the NDOC for questions?
Brooke, the dashboard up right now. Does not look like we've got any new questions over the last couple of minutes.
Great. Well, with that, we really thank you all for joining us. Again, we really look forward to seeing you all next week. And with that, Rob, anything you want to add on the partnership or OB3I?
The only thing I would just add is that from 2017, COVID response, at FEMA, we've seen a need to make some change. So in previous conferences, we highlighted this idea of maybe creating an emergency support function for private sector. That is now ESF 14, cross-sector business and infrastructure. At FEMA, we made some changes structurally as well. We used to have the private sector division. It's now the Office of Business, Industry, and Infrastructure Integration. We want to do more than just engage industry from a FEMA standpoint. We really do want to acknowledge and align the capabilities, the concerns, and also the opportunities. And so, not just with conferences like this, but throughout the year, we're going to be looking at engaging just a little bit differently, and we have to engage a little bit differently, based upon where we are before, during, and after disaster. And with this event, we're always going to be in the middle of the disaster itself. It goes without saying that this is a team sport, and I really do appreciate, just to kind of start closing out the call, Abby, Susan, Andrew from OSHA, and then also Steve Goldstein from NOAA. But certainly Brooks, you and your team, and just so I think Brooks is being a little bit modest, the behind the scenes coordination that it takes to put on a 3-day event virtually with a number of senior leadership, both in government, outside of government, and as Brooks has said, experts both on the screen and then also in the audience. Really makes it a unique opportunity, but it's a really significant challenge. So I really appreciate the partnership, and thanks for the technology challenge that you're kind of taking on as well to pull off this kind of an event, and really look forward to continuing the partnership, Brooks.
Same to you. Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much. And with that, we'll conclude today and look forward to seeing you all at 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday, July 14th. Thank you.